sniffed where the baby had lain. To pay off his drug debt, Crystal's boyfriend offered her for a night as payment. When she fought the dealer, he shoved a switchblade up her vagina and twisted. The boyfriend beat her before taking her to the hospital. I gave the dog a dish of kibble. I rocked the baby in my arms. Its eyes stayed closed. Parts of it started disappearing. Tonight on the news, a pregnant woman couldn't drive fast enough to the hospital. She swerved through a rail and flew into a ditch. In those airborne moments, she delivered the baby. The police found the mother's neck broken. The baby rolled under the seat, still breathing. One policeman wrapped the cold baby in a soiled blanket and ran to the ambulance through a night frosty with stars. Crystal didn't bleed to death. Surgery helped. No more sex, no babies. The boys were out on parole. Crystal turned 16 and told her story. Thank you. And next is Erin Adair-Hodges.
Thank you, Maryfrances. Thank you to everyone at the Writers' Place, not just for tonight, but for all you always do for Kansas City. Ever since I came here in 2018, I have felt incredibly welcomed, and I'm so honored to be reading with you all tonight. And I can't wait to hear you. I'm going to be reading my most recently published poem because it feels fresh, even though I wrote it a couple of years ago. This just came out in the American Poetry Review. This is "My new boss has been thinking a lot about time. Though he doesn't say exactly what this thinking is about. He strokes his beard, a clock his face has made, his right leg lifted to harass the chair, his left on the floor, pulpited flamingo in tweed. He tells me to relax. And maybe it's because of the authoritative way he can grow hair under his nose, but this command works like a cauldron incantation. I'm so relaxed. It's as if I too have never thought about time, about the frenzied hours trying to settle my son's dervishing, begging the languageless to take my breast so we could be done, and I could get back to the work which would not wait. I'm so relaxed, I don't remember how that son now tells me 7 was the worst year, because that was the year I left to find a job. How the time difference meant there were days we could not talk at all. I pack the picture books he has outgrown into cardboard boxes I label for some future hymn's nostalgic need for bears on quests, their orphaned hunts for hats and homes and sleep. My mother never saved such things. She thought I'd want to forget those years. Sometimes what has happened never stops happening. Even now, this windowed conference room smell of toner, the tea let out to stale, our old disappointments dandruff the air, a thought scrum of hurt. I am so relaxed, though, I can finally be kind. So I cradle my boss, sing him a lullaby until he burbles with joy. I could do anything to his soft body. From a distance, this looks like mercy. A freckled boy cradling the broken bird, his stone set loose from the sky. The woods outside applaud. They have been waiting for the man in me to come home. Another's blood the key. The violence of time the door. Thank you. And up next, I'm pleased to introduce Katherine Anderson.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Maryfrances and Jenny, for pulling us all together. This is really, really wonderful. My poem is Every Sparrow Fallen. My grandmother left her home in New York City after giving birth to a baby boy, surrendered to an orphanage. She came back in 1918 to serve as a nurse during the influenza pandemic. When the worst happens, everyone fears for those loved, the counted dead, the masks, the vials of blood. You can imagine, you who have felt that same shock, stopping everything. Do not enter, do not touch. Every sparrow fallen, the sky pale as a knife blade. All day, a boy about the same age as my grandmother's son stares at the large bronze doors of the hospital where she works. He watches a mule-hitched wagon lead one coffin after the other over the rail yard tracks to the graveyard. As dusk falls, he watches my grandmother come through the hospital doors, starched nurse's cap fixed to her bun, red cape flared like a burning wing. Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Stan Banks.
Hello, everyone. I want to dedicate this poem, it's pretty short, to my grandmother, a great Kansas City bootlegger back in the day, and Sonny Kennard, a great jazz legend of Vine Street. And I'm going to read the title poem of my book, Blue Beat Syncopation. Since we just left March, since February, Black History Month, I thought I'd give this to you. Blue Beat Syncopation. Read it with a bounce and a funky irregular beat. Drink to it with something smooth sinking in your system. Wow to it like the grandeur of Nat King Cole's voice. Jazz to it like the prophetic Langston Hughes. Tap to it like the flying feet of Gregory Hines. Shake to it like sisters luscious ass tight. Wail to it. Fret over it like the eternal Billie Holiday. Pain in every vein. Dip to it with some raw, concrete lyrics like Tupac and Biggie. The syncopation of life is the rhythm of time and space, like the wayward beat of a heart. Not red, not black, not white, just blues. Thank you, everyone. And I want to introduce a wonderful poet, and I'd say that even if she wasn't my wife and held my life in her hands, Janet Banks, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. How's everybody doing? Thanks, Maryfrances, and thank you, Jenny, for pulling together this program. I love to read and hear everybody's voices. The title of this poem is When I'm Full of Myself. It's titled Wings of My Ego. They lift me dripping with selfdom. My feet are off the concrete, and I'm running in place, slicing through the air. Hot oxygen swirls, feeling heady, floating gracefully like a sweetback, trying to land, but it does not have eyes. I do. My swollen thought has got me walking around like a black and gold peacock, fanning my feathers like a cuckoo bird. I can't control myself. My universe is off limits. It surrounds me like a chain link fence made from titanium. My world is untouchable, locked down like Sing Sing. I take flight like a raven, indigo, shining and smooth. My ego is moving me up past everyone, everything, until I burst through my cosmic source. I start to hit my imaginary brakes. I'm going to crash and burn, burn. The wings of my ego have thrown me into my she-made hell. The fall was so harsh. The collision humbled me. Thank you. And the next person to read is Phyllis Becker.
Thank you, Janet. And I'm also very happy to be here. Thank you, Maryfrances and Jenny, for putting together this group. I'm going to read a poem that honors two very important people to me, my father after he passed, and also the poem contains a line from a poem by Phil Miller, and I guess I could probably call Phil my poetry dad. So I'm happy to honor both these people tonight with this poem. The day after your funeral, we roll out of bed, gelatinous, amoeba-like, onto the front porch, reconstitute into form, and settle comfortably into our broken selves. We are held by the heat of a hot-ass Midwest summer. The grass, trees, flowers, sky, and sunlight, a blur of impressionistic greens, blues, yellows. Our nephew from out of town joins us for coffee and silence. His watchful eyes are kind. Neighbors walk their dogs, mow the grass. The leaves of the trees form a canopy. The sweet odor of green soothes us. A cousin and her husband bring bottles of specially selected wines. Corks are removed. We drink the long day, make toast, laugh, tear up, eat cheese, crackers, and fruit. Aunts take over the crumbs. The cousins leave in a flurry of hugs, kisses, and promises. The nephew retreats into the house. We sit as the day slips away. The thrum of the peepers and cicadas surround us, and we are shadows among shadows. Thank you. Appreciate it. And it's my pleasure to introduce Maria Vasquez Boyd and my sister.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Maryfrances, for this opportunity. A wonderful night. Indeed, I'm honored. Familia. My grandfather, Rosilio, my grandmother, Guadalupe, brought 15 children into this world. Francis, Lucio, Sergio, Rosa, Ruben, Josephine, Esperanza, Rodolfo, Gloria, Geneva, Alicia, Emilia, Rita, Ricardo, and Tomas. Baby Gloria and Geneva would remain as beautiful, innocent infants. My grandmother, with long silver braids, skin soft, the color of adobe, was born in 1909 in Leon, Guanajuato, Mexico. My grandfather, born in 1900, came from the land of sleeping volcanoes and miracles, the place where Our Lady of San Juan de los Lagos delivered her first miracle. Her statue was cast in the Purepecha way of plastering a mixture of juice from an orchid and corn. There was a young daughter of trapeze artists who slipped on 6 or 7 knives and was mortally wounded. A curandera laid the statue of Our Lady of San Juan de los Lagos next to the child's body, and in a few minutes, the young daughter moved, restored to life. We learn the ways of curanderas and healers. We believe in miracles. I am told by my father, Reynaldo Cortez, that we come from generations of curanderas and healers. I am told by my mother, Rosa, that my grandmother learned what she learned from her mother and her mother's mother, our ancestors. Once, during a raging storm under indigo skies, my mother witnessed my grandmother collecting dry braided palms, laid them on a table filled with photographs surrounded by a single white candle that flickered in a green glass jar. She gathered the palms, placed them in a clay pot. Then she went outdoors, lit the contents with a match, and offered the burning palms to the cardinal directions: north, south, east, west, whispering to Ejecote, the god of wind. The end of birth is death. The end of death is birth. Thank you. Next, Xanath Caraza.
Buenas noches. Thank you for the invitation. Hola, Maria. Good to see you. Good to see you and everybody else. Thank you, Maryfrances. Thank you, Jenny, for the invitation. And one poem, sin preámbulos, in both English and Spanish, without preamble. Violeta es la mañana sin preámbulos. Se filtra la luz en las grietas. Se escurre el delirio en los pétalos. Saetas de color rompen la superficie que tocan. Tiñe aurora los recuerdos, polícroma melodía. Violeta fue la luz, se desvanece, con la brisa, ráfaga de fuego. Tiempo violeta delinea la partida. Tic, tac, tic, tac, tic, tac, tic, tac. Violet is the morning without preamble. Light filtering through crevices, delirium sliding down petals, colored arrows broaching the surfaces they touch, polychrome melody tinting memories down. Violet was the light it dissipates, with the breeze, burst of flame. Violet time delineates the departure. Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock. Thank you. Gracias. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend Tina Hacker. Adelante.
You're on mute.
In the excitement, you just forget to unmute. I'm going to read a poem about my cousin who survived Auschwitz. I'm reading about Auschwitz now for a course, and she was one of about 7,000 people who survived. 1.1 million people were murdered. The poem is a true story with some license. Looking for Helen. The worst part was the hunger. My cousin Helen says this about her time at Auschwitz. It's all she'll say. She pretends not to hear my pleas for more information, lapses into Hungarian, fleeing to the words of her youth and remaining there until the all clear is sounded by talk of other matters, other times. I hear rabbis repeat reasons why Helen should, must, ought to say more for future generations, for past generations, for all generations. They smile at her, confident in their skills at persuasion, until they feel gusts of her silence, hear the trumpet call of her unspoken words sound retreat. I can now meet with Helen without asking about the camp. I ignore the restless questions tossing and turning in my mind, catch them before they lunge at her with impatient demands. Each year, the unease becomes easier to bear. But last month, when I called Helen's office, a voice hollow with indifference said, "No one by that name works here. Maybe Julie can help you." My cousin came on the line. She told me her real name was Julie and didn't know why the family always called her Helen. That's all she'd say. I can now call her Julie without translating her new name into the original. I wonder if she will change her name again. Where has she put Helen? Is she in hiding, So when the Nazis come, her neighbors will say, no one by that name lives here. And now it's my honor to introduce Jemshed Khan. Why isn't it switching?
Thank you, Tina. My internet's flaking in and out a bit, but I went to high school in Maryville, Missouri, and I was the only person of color for the 3 years I was there. So this is based on some of the experiences there. The title is Maryville High School, 1973, and it begins with an epigram. Raymond Gunn, a 27-year-old African-American man torched by a white mob in Maryville, Missouri, January 12th, 1931. That's from Wikipedia. Our neighbor Stokes spits across the fence, calls us Arabs with dirty petrodollars. I don't say anything because a half mile north of here, back in 31, 4,000 townsfolk with rope and gasoline marched Raymond Gunn to the schoolhouse. A man wearing a red coat set the fire, locally known, never named, never tried. In school, most kids leave me alone. I avoid Ronnie Hecker, who badgers me in sing-song gibberish, while his circling friends smile and smirk. What scares me is trouble from the Smith boys, brothers who locked a piglet with the runs in Joe Lempert's gymnasium locker. For show and tell, they bring a mason jar with Raymond's dark finger severed, charred. At our 10-year high school reunion, Ron buys me a beer at the Dewdrop Inn. I'm sorry, he says, I learned racism at home from Dad. We shake hands, bear hug. I crook an arm across his shoulder. Ron, you never creeped me out like them Smith boys. We brag about high school pranks, the girls we knew, the cars wrecked. About the Smiths, Ron says, they're doing life for murder one. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Hedgehog Cook.
Thank you, Jemshed. Thank you for your work. So, I'm hearing a kind of undercurrent of family and name, and my poem is also going to fit into that undercurrent and sort of thread that's coming through the reading. Halmoni. How is it I don't know your name? How is it I know that as a child, during the occupation, you had your name taken away, were given a Japanese one, but I still don't know your name. I think of my parents every day during pandemic, but do not call. Why is so much left unsaid, so much left unasked? What stone is in my mouth? When I was a child, grandmother, we went back to Korea when you still lived by the sea. When I scraped my forearm, you licked your finger, rubbed saliva into the wound. I recoiled in disgust. You called it yak, but I didn't understand. I asked my father why you called it medicine. And he said that when you have lived without, you manage with whatever you have. The day we walked to Taechon Beach together, I saw bladder wrack tossed up on the sand, and the bumps revolted me. I didn't know then certain seaweed can't survive without vesicles, air-filled bladders lifting their sinuous brown lengths up to the sun. I didn't know extracellular vesicles in saliva help blood to clot, and so do promote healing. This morning, I finally call my parents and learn your death anniversary was yesterday. 3 years you've been gone. Let the mouth do its work unconstrained. In a sea of grief, I learned to breathe underwater, that your name is Yoon Chongim. Thank you. And I also wanted to say thank you to Glenn, who's the editor of a forthcoming Kansas City anthology. This poem is one of two that's going to be included in there. So, and I'm sure, I know others here and other, of course, part of this wonderful community are going to be in that anthology. So do check that out when it comes out. I think, Glenn, maybe you can confirm, I think it's Curating Home is the title.
That is the title.
So thank you, Glenn. And I'm really excited to be introducing Jenny Wahlberg as our next reader tonight. And thank you, Jenny and Maryfrances, for putting all this together.
Thank you, my dear friend Hedgehog. That was so beautiful. It's so good to see you and hear you. My poem happens in Kansas City in Union Station, and it's dedicated to a Kansas City poet who's here, Erin Adair-Hodges, my best friend. And thank you to the Missouri Review, who originally published this poem. Different kinds of sadness. Sometimes a friend can save your life, as when you drove in from Albuquerque, the day I left the man I thought would kill me. We went to the train station and sat among the Beaux-Arts pediments and bas-reliefs, having a cocktail called the Manhattan Kansas. You brought a package of fresh tortillas, some butter, some cheese, will survive. The we, a sort of kindness, a kind of sadness. The drinks were garnished with shriveled figs instead of maraschinos, which was a different kind of sadness. The station was built in 1914, and no one who can remember 1914 is left. Your eyes began to time travel behind your white-rimmed glasses, and I knew you were thinking about your son. The lives we have chosen not to live are enough to fill the whole day's trains with ghosts and ghosts and ghosts. But there are also people who have known you forever, which is yet another kind of sadness because you've only just met. Love you, Erin. It's my great pleasure to introduce Glenn North.
Good evening, everyone. This is such an amazing opportunity to read with so many poets that I admire and respect. Sometimes when I am out of ideas or the words don't come, I'll look at poems that I've cherished over the years and write shadow poems. And so I'd like to share one tonight based on Howl by Allen Ginsberg. Another thing that I enjoy is jazz poetry. And I'm always looking for the music in the words. And so this is what Allen Ginsberg said of his poem Howl, and then I'll dive right in. The line length, you'll notice, they're all built on bop. You might think of them as a bop refrain, chorus after chorus after chorus. The idea being, say, Lester Young in Kansas City in 1938, blowing 72 choruses of The Man I Love until everyone in the hall was out of his head. Howl, the remix. I saw the stupefied souls of my generation ravaged by the heinous heresy that a hyper-hedonistic, self-seeking, I-me-my existence could bring them joy. Souls clothed in insatiable flesh, folding themselves into medicine cabinets, scurrying into translucent sepia-toned bottles, seduced by pharmaceutical solutions to substantiate a pseudo-reality, opioid oafs who somehow believed themselves to be better than the meth heads and crack whores tweaking on 39th and Main. Souls racked with existential angst, so wrapped in the sashes of self-absorption and neo-narcissism, desensitized to the ultra-violence of the dum-diddy-dum-dum day, that the bullet-ridden, blood-soaked infant ghosts of Sandy Hook barely give them pause. Souls in gentrified exposed brick, downtown lofts, northeast roach-infested tenements, overpriced midtown two-stories, angry Brookside cottages, make America great again, Lee Summit Ranch styles, all stuck on their stupid couches of obesity, stymied in a Netflix stupor, a bizarre, banal, binge-watching bonanza of buffoonery. Souls no longer seeking truth and beauty in art or the muse in music, having turned their backs on jazz, settle for canned, computerized, cacophonic caricatures, lacking composition, monotonous, auto-tuned, sordid strip club symphonies, twerk tracks, transcribed for titillation. I've seen souls in need of screens, any screen, to Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, tweet, looking for swipe right love and likes from strangers, posting photos of their vacuously vain vacations in their mundane megalomaniacal meals, while little girls in Flint, Michigan don't have clean drinking water. Souls of grown men obsessed with playing with balls, playing with their own balls, erotomaniacs purveying porn, pulverizing their penises, a potpourri of predatory predilection so perverse, so pervasive that the touch from a real woman leaves them impotent. Souls of women diminished into dysmorphic delusions, lifting, nipping, tucking, cutting, injecting, dieting, dying for a Photoshop fantasy frame, a Botox vision of beauty that can never be obtained. Souls with holes that can't be filled, bartering their bodies on Craigslist or Tinder, but no tenderness, no authentic intimacy, no caress, only the conjugal clanking of jankety genitals joined in an unregenerate gyration of jaundice and jism. As I stood on the corner of 18th and Vine, a Charlie Parker tune howling from the Blue Room, I counted myself among those souls, dodging the image of myself reflected in the windows of cars passing by, not wanting to see the man I said I'd never be, the man I have become, another in the legion of souls who in the vanity of mortality cobbled together gods from dream catchers and crystals, swastikas and pistols, synthetic gods who would worship us. And I watched Jesus wave goodbye from a Greyhound bus. Oh Lord, who will we pray to now? Thank you. And it is my pleasure to introduce Trish Reeves.
Wow, Glenn, thank you. The title of the poem I'll read, A Couple of Feet Out of True, refers to the structural repairs once needed for the Sistine Chapel prior to the ceiling work or painting. Pope Julius II wanted Michelangelo to do the painting, and the sculptor said no. He wasn't interested. He was a painter. Apparently, it was nearly impossible to deny the wishes of a pope at that time in Italy. So the sculptor began painting in 1508 and found a way to please himself rather than the pope. A couple of feet out of true. So the chapel needs more dirt, in the language of the soil mechanic, and then tie rods to hold the right wall. And then one might request Michelangelo. But he is on a horse to Bologna, and years ahead of him lie the years as subversive, not submissive to a pope. Though who could see this when looking upwards, the ceiling so far from view that only the painter knew half the figures too small, and the commissioned Christ nowhere to be seen among the beauty of the flesh of so many naked bodies and sibyls, the Persian sibyl robed in softest emerald, God titanic in lavender, and Old Testament prophets who never dreamed their dreams might come true, a boy God brighter than the rabbis, and whose father never touched the boy's mother, but to lead her on a donkey. Mother, the updated Leda, surrounded by wings, once assigned to swans. It is now my pleasure to introduce Robert Stewart.
Thank you, Trish. Good to see all of you. If I might, I would like to say a word about AWP, which is going on right now. Every year, I find the tributes to be very powerful, tributes to writers who have passed, who have gone. And this year, on Thursday, there was a tribute to the poet Linda Gregg. And on Friday, there was a tribute to Stanley Plumley, both of which I found to be very meaningful and important, emotionally powerful events. And tomorrow on Sunday, there's a tribute to the poet June Jordan. All three of those poets, very, very important poets. And if you're registered for AWP, you might look into those tributes. Just very moving experiences. I'm going to read a poem that looks forward to Easter. It's called In the Back Pews on Easter at St. Anne's in Prairie Village and simultaneously St. Elizabeth's in Waldo, St. Francis, and doubtless Our Lady of Sorrows, Midtown. Babies being carried out to howl in the lobby, then carried back in, passing each other, babies with backs arched in some kind of agony, eyes scrunched shut, babies beginning to toddle, who return on their own tiny feet, picked up, passed back and forth, moms to dads to grandmas, who sit with the book for babies, birds, giraffes, and babies moaning full out wails, dropping to the floor and chased under pews, breaking crayons, babies banging Tonka trucks, babies held by friends in the parish, babies going goog, oog, teething a shoulder, waving to the young man here alone, waving back. Behind the baby, smiling grandmas kissing the little fingers after babies have been on the floor, babies crawling the aisles for the readings of Acts and Psalms and the stone the builders rejected, scooped up before they topple the little table with cruets of water and wine, babies grasping the basket lined with cash, and everyone holding babies to their shoulders during Colossians and John, laughing with babies at the elevation. The next poet is Courtney Fay Taylor.
Thank you, Robert. So this poem doesn't have a title, and I'm going to give a content warning for some sexual violence. After Toyin, I called everyone with a difficult life in my life. Gaslight. Before 2016, I had not heard of it. Breakfast is severed. Sunny side up eggs, little water beds. Clover honey flooding up the forehead of a bear. Kettle finna cry while his piss rings porcelain behind the only door in our apartment, but after he hit me, doors between us were over. Should be considered that women's dreams continue to put a run in the tights of colonial rule. In war, these women are taken into theaters, tanks, and pueblos, and in these places they are harmed to harm their husbands. Women are a point that's made. My heart goes out to the place. Should be considered that Crystal Harlins, mama of Latasha Harlins, put a restraining order out on her man, but men don't rest. She and her baby share a cause of death. Thanksgiving Day, she's in the club, girling her nails when the side chick walks in. Bouncer must have missed during the frisk, her steel cyst. Should be considered that Suja assembled couches to fund her husband's dream of convenience, that she did so while inhabiting a woman's place, synced sheets, such flawless boxes in the armoire, 3 babies fed a tenuous milk, and all the days he wanted sex, he got sex, all the days he wanted it. Should be considered that Dee Millard invented the double eyelid surgery, rehearsing the trick on women like you. We are harmed. Should be considered that James Marion Sims invented the PAP,
dismantling a cyst like explosives to soothe a husband. Should be considered that D. Millard invented the double eyelid surgery, that James Marion Sims invented the PAP, rehearsing the trick on women like you, dismantling a cyst like explosives. We are harmed to soothe a husband. Consider that now I'm in a nigga with no answers, disturbed. I cover my drink, fist my car keys, check the back seat, this curriculum to groom the echoes. Downtown, my rape kit collector takes a sip of water, and so my whole world takes a sip of that water. Should be considered how war denotes two brotherhoods, how a hood unites some brothers, how one brother wished rape on the other, how the war will award both brothers. Consider we've been gaslit into forgiving this. Remember that our men were invented to scare and convince. This is true, regardless of the ship. Consider that our ancestors have incredible side eye, the talent of seeing things they are not directly looking at, an adaptation from lynchings, beatings, and other fearings. Considered they were convinced into colonies, corsets, boycotts, jobs, and in these robberies they were harmed to harm a concept. Consider that backhands in the homes of our descendants are statistically not extremely likely to lower. At the precinct, our pussies and eyelids give fingerprints, and Linnaeus takes a sip of gaslight. Consider that safety measures between us, like restraining orders and doors, were invented to convince. Concentrate. We have decisions to make. Fire is that decision to make. Pain is a symptom of the aftermath. Pain only gonna happen if you survive, and fools survive. Please consider that I'm trying to survive, but our men are invented, and inventions don't rest. Men don't rest until terrible. Thank you. And next we'll have William Trowbridge.
Well, thank you, Maryfrances and Jenny, and it's great to be reading with all you terrific Kansas City poets. Tonight I'm going to read a poem called Self-Help. Self-help is always in vogue, and so I will offer you these kind suggestions. Self-help. Let's get mad, fellow losers, fellow flops, fellow dust eaters, fellow weepers, fellow had a wife and couldn't keep hers. Let's get mad and bad and high in the stirrups. They never liked us, never gave us diddly when we needed a break. Who the hell are they anyway? 100,000 softies tops, moping over their pitty floors, worried that help these days is getting just too uppity to lick a boot, or that the snowpack at Aspen might be, well, simply intolerable. Rebellion strong, tough as dandelions, raised on humble pie and hind tit, and we've had a belly full up to our eyeballs. Don't forget, without us, winning's obsolete. So let's knock off the oohs and ahs, the encores, the Wall Street Journal. Let them play the Super Bowl to an empty Superdome. Let the election returns read 0-0. Let them fight the next war by their lonesomes with caviar and empty Mouton Rothschild bottles. Boycott their movies, their mouthwashes, their douchebags, their life insurance, their grinning 8x10 glossies. We'll show them what losing is like. Put the boots to them. Hit them off at the pass. Trap them in a box canyon. Take their children hostage and teach the little snots our primitive ways to say, oh, well, and what's the use when they take the wrong turn off, bobble a punt, borrow from the guy with the two big friends named principal and interest. Leave them with nothing but fall back on but a rock and hard place, the devil in the deep blue sea, chaos and old night, aces and eights, household finance and the Reader's Digest sweepstakes. And let all their letters begin with, dear applicant, thank you for letting us see your resume. Or, dear customer, a good credit rating is a serious responsibility, not a right. We've got the bench, we've got general admission, we've got bad stomachs, bad arches, bad checks, bad timing, bad luck, bad news, and the very worst intentions. Remember Wrong Way Corrigan, General Burgoyne, Harold Stassen, Pickett's Charge, Pickett's Charge, The Electric Spaghetti Fork, Troy Donahue, Troy, The Edsel, Leisure Suits, Dynaflow, The Maginot Line, and Casey at the Bat, not to mention Uncle Saul and his worm farm. Let's reach down for that minus 10%, that faulty premise, those visions and revisions, that Bush League cockeyed backfiring two left-footed shit for brains urge to go out there and do something. Sort of. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. What a wonderful night of great readings. Let's give everybody a hand. And I want to thank all of you for participating tonight. And I just have a couple of announcements I'd like to make in terms of Writers Place readings coming up. On March 19th, we will have Catherine Pierce, Rosemarie Kinder, and Walter Bargan reading. And those readings start at 7. On April 16th, during National Poetry Month, we will have Katie Manning, Wayne Miller, and Kevin Proofer reading. Wayne, all three of them have new books out. And then on May 21st, we have the next Crystal Field Scholarship reading, which will be much like what you're seeing tonight. And we hope that people will sign up to read for that. The theme this year is Guilty Pleasures. And then finally, on June 18th, and I'm going to mess up how to pronounce this name because I haven't asked him yet, Sadiq Dzukoji and Kate Browder and George Bilger. And so we hope that you will join us for one or all of those coming up every third Friday.
Hey,
so
Maryfrances, can I add that we have the Riverfront reading coming up on March 12th, featuring Stan Banks and Janet Banks and Gina Bardwell. So come if you can. It'll be a great one.
Phyllis, do you want to say any other ones or just that one?
Just that one.
Okay. So there you are. Every second Friday, Riverfront readings. Every third Friday, Writers Place reading series. If you want to unmute now and say anything, we have a few minutes that you could just chat a bit. And Jenny and I thank you so much for coming tonight, for participating, for being a part of the audience as well as those readers. Thank you all.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you all for your wonderful poems.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you
What
all.
a great night. Yes, thank you.
Glad to be here with you guys.
Good to see you, Bob.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Gloria.
Yep.
Hi, Gloria.
Good closing and just wonderful poems.
Great poem.